Hey guys, Chapadong here, and we haven't gone through an NHL DFS tutorial for beginners in a very, very long time. And of course, just got a question today, kind of about who the experts are in DFS Army, who to talk to about learning the game. And so to me, that means very, 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 very beginning type stuff. So let's just recap 10, 15 minutes here. If we have to come back for a second part, we will. So be prepared. This might get a little bit longer because a lot of info to cover to bring a brand new guy up to speed, but I love introducing people to hockey. It is one of the best DFS sports, in my opinion. Very volatile, lots of ups and downs. These days, pretty poor contest selection out there on the sites. That's the real killer now, is that with the advent of sports betting, it seems that some of the contest selection has suffered in classic DFS. I probably won't talk much about tiers, but tiers will work very much the same because NHL is a very high correlation sport. It's not like NBA. In the scoring system within hockey, much like baseball, think of it like baseball. If you know baseball, you already kind of know hockey. You just don't know you know. But it's good to have guys on base in front of your hitter in hockey or in baseball. It's good to have guys on the ice with your skater in hockey. So when my guy scores a goal, if I also have the assist and the secondary assist from the skaters on that hockey team, it gives me one scoring event and gives me a buttload of points because just like touchdowns in football, like on a FanDuel that's more touchdown dependent, your scoring events are so high compared to the activity events, which is really what makes a big difference between the volatility in the sports between like a basketball and football, baseball, hockey, whatever. The scoring events are so overweighted towards the compared to the activity events. Like if I'm talking about basketball, an assist is what 1.2, 1.3 points or whatever, and a basket's 2 points or three if it's 3 pointer, whatever. Well, the 1.2 and the three, they're not that different. So any activity counts. That's why any of these guys are on the floor all of the time. The more they're on the floor, the more opportunity they have to score. While that's true in football, hockey, baseball, whatever, the more they're on the field, the more they're on the rink, the more they're on whatever, the diamond, they have more opportunity to score points, but they still have to get the scoring event. Like a tight end has to fall into the end zone. The tight end is just typically not very often going to get 8 to 10 targets a game and rack up 40 to 50 yards with no touchdown and still meet value, right? It just doesn't, because the scoring, the 6 point touchdown compared to a half a point or a full point for a reception is like a 6-to-1 ratio, where in NBA it's like a 2-to-1 ratio, a basket versus an assist. It's like a 2-to-1 ratio. Hockey is very similar. Baseball is very similar. In fact, it might even be more exaggerated. Like a home run in baseball is worth like 12 points. A base hit is worth like 3. That's a 4-to-1 ratio. In hockey, a goal is worth upwards of 12 points, and a shot on goal is like 1 point something. So the ratio is more like 9-to-1. So when you get to these ridiculous discrepancies in the point scoring, you have to get the goals. And the goal is the unpredictable part. A hockey player that scores a goal, there is no Wayne Gretzky in existence anymore. So these guys score 40, 50 goals a year and had a great year, but there's 80 some odd games. So they're not even scoring a goal every game. You have, and sometimes they score 2 goals in a game or 3. You have to get it right the day that guy scores. Because just getting a guy to put 5 shots on goal and give you 6 points just isn't going to pay off his salary. His salary is based on scoring goals. So that's the gist of why hockey is so volatile and why stacking is so important, because getting the assist, if the goal's worth 12 and the assist is worth 8 and a shot on goal is only worth like 1.5 points, you need the goals and you need the assists to actually score. So when you get that goal, you need to have the assists with it. That's what helps, because goals are so unpredictable. When you get one right, you need to have the other pieces with it. That's what makes it such a highly correlated sport. So speaking along those lines, let's dive into probably the number one website outside of DFS Army that we would check or we will recommend, and that's dailyfaceoff.com. So bookmark that site, because what that site is going to do is show you starting goalies for the day, who's projected, who's confirmed, blah, 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 right? So we got a short slate today of only 4 games, right? So anyway, we'll talk someday, that's more intermediate advanced stuff in terms of short slate versus large slate behavior versus lineup constructions for all that stuff, okay? We'll talk about all the nuances down the road. But for now, for the basics, this site shows you who's confirmed. That means that you can take Caden Primo and you can just kind of like count on his projection in the domination station when you get there in DFS Army. If you see the other guy, the other goalie for Montreal, whoever it is, I don't even know this year, but if he's getting maybe Jake Allen, but if you are seeing him getting projected points, zero his ass out because Caden Primo is confirmed in, and that's not going to change. This is like waiting for a lineup in basketball or like waiting for a lineup to be released in baseball, in that at some point during the day we start getting this information. It's not like basketball in that late swaps not so much a thing. Late scratches and stuff are less common and honestly kind of rare. They do happen, but they're pretty rare. So once lineups kind of get confirmed, that's fine. When you get past the goalies and you go to the line combos, that's the next place. You can pick any team you want and you can see their lines, their scoring lines for forwards, power play, defense, all that stuff. So if I picked, say, I'm familiar with the St. Louis Blues, but let's pick the Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton Oilers on that top line, these are your line 1 guys. These are the guys that are usually the best scorers on the team, usually. And that's Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, and Hyman. And you go to line 2, and you see McLeod, Draisaitl, and Fagel, whatever his name is. Evander Kane, Ryan, and Janmark. These are the guys, lines 1, 2, 3. Line 4 is usually not much of a factor, especially on big slates when it comes to hockey. So focus on the top 3 lines and really only the top 2 most of the time. So just remember in your head, line 1, line 2. That's really what you're mostly after. Sometimes you'll see a line 3, but not really. Okay, the correlation here is between the forwards. Yeah, we can do defense. Defense is considered kind of a little second, kind of a split offside shoot where these defenders do definitely overlap ice time with these forwards, but the forwards usually do the scoring. So these are the guys you're focused on when we're talking about stacking. You may include a defenseman with this stack, but if I'm talking about stacking line 1, I'm talking about these 3 guys. If I'm talking about stacking line 2, I'm talking about these 3 guys. Okay? And the reason why is they share ice time together. When Connor McDavid scores, Nugent Hopkins and Hyman were on the ice with him. If they both get the assists, you've just nailed the entire stack slam, right? Like you've just had the whole bit. And that's great. If you stack McDavid with Draisaitl, they're not sharing ice time together as of right now. Now, it varies throughout the year. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's a funny thing about hockey. These lines are subject to change on a coach's whim, sometimes in the middle of the game. So that part's unpredictable. But generally speaking, the way this game lines up right now, McDavid and Draisaitl are not sharing ice time together on this 5-on-5 even strength type of situation. We'll talk about power plays here in a minute. But McDavid and Draisaitl, if McDavid scores a goal, Draisaitl probably did not have the opportunity to get the assist. He's not on the ice. He's sitting over there on the bench drinking Gatorade, right? That's why you don't typically stack these 2 guys together, because they don't correlate as well as Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, and Hyman do. Okay? So if you know that for every team, you can click through all of these teams and you can get it. You can double check the lines for Carolina, Boston, Buffalo, Florida, St. Louis, Dallas, whatever. Doesn't matter. This site is very good at being pretty accurate in determining how these guys. Now, it's not 100%, but it's pretty damn good. And our domination station usually reflects that kind of stuff. Okay. So what about the power play stuff? Well, defensive pairings. There's your defense 1. They're usually on the ice with line 1, but they do overlap. Hockey doesn't often make 5-man changes. They make a lot of 3-man and 2-man changes. They make 3-man changes on the fly, and these 3 come off the ice, and these 3 go on, and the defensemen stay on the ice. And then a minute later, these guys stay on the ice for a bit, and then the defensemen come off, and these 2 come on. So there's an overlap. That's why they're kind of separate scenarios. But generally speaking, the first defensive pairing can be paired with the top line. The second defensive pairing can be paired with the second line, and vice versa. But just understand there is some overlap. Darnell Nurse, if Draisaitl scores on line 2, Darnell Nurse could get the assist. Okay, so don't let that completely shock you if you ever notice that happening. On the first power play unit, though, now these things shift up. Now we've got Draisaitl on there with McDavid, and that's why I specifically went to this team to point them out. This is where you can stack these guys. If they share power play time, they do overlap on the ice, at least some. And whereas this line one, Hyman, Nugent, Hopkins, and McDavid stay there, then all of a sudden Bouchard and Draisaitl come on the ice with them, and those are guys that overlap on the power play unit. So if you score a power play goal and McDavid scores the goal, it is possible at this point that Nugent, Hopkins, and Draisaitl got the assists, and that's your stack slam. Okay, so bear in mind that these things do change up, and if this sounds confusing and overwhelming, I apologize, but this is just the beginning. This stuff will all make perfect sense in a fairly short amount of time because you're going to be dealing with it every day, every day, every day, every day. You're just going to double check and look at these units. Maybe you're like me and you like stack. I like to stack the power play units in cash games, and I like to stack the regular full strength units in GPPs. And I might explain that to you in another video. If I don't, ask me and I'll explain it to you in Discord. It's not a hard concept. It deals with floor versus ceiling, which we look for floor in cash games. We look for ceiling in tournaments. And it helps me mitigate a little bit of the volatility of this sport. That said, let's walk through a little bit of some of these teams and just show you how it shakes out. Let's do Colorado. There's your top line. There's your second line. There's your defensive pairings, and here's your power play. McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar, the defenseman, right, is always on the power play unit with these guys. Nichushkin and Drouin, and then see Drouin is down here on line 2. So whereas McKinnon and Drouin do not overlap on regular ice time, they do overlap a little bit on the power play. So again, it's possible that you do get an assist from one of these guys, but it's not very likely because most of the time they're not on power plays, but 3 or 4 times a game. Most of the time they're together on this top line. These are the guys you would want to stack most of the time. If I look at line combos for even Ottawa, whatever, Tkachuk, Stützle, and Giroux. But I bet you I see Tarasenko on the top. I don't. Wow, that's kind of a shock. But there's Tkachuk, Stützle, and no Giroux. Giroux drops to the second power play unit. So again, there are some nuances that make some sense, and as you play these guys more, these scenarios come up more, you'll start to understand the differences. Plus, you can always look in the domination station and you can see the line grouping and the power play line. So if you see a 1-1, they're on the top line and on power play 1. If you see a 2-1, they're on the second line and the power play 1. So you can overlap guys that way and double check without having to use dailyfaceoff.com if you don't want to. Okay. This is probably a decent point to kind of cut this first video and just show you a little bit, talk to you a little bit about the scoring, talk to you a little bit about the who's and the what's and whatever, and why hockey is so correlative in terms of as a sport and so volatile because it's so highly correlative within the assists and the goals, and they're so overweighted towards points compared to the activity bonuses like shots on goal and such, that stacking and getting the goals is a thing, and you'll see it in cash games, and that's why even cash games in hockey can be very, very volatile. Understand that going in, that you can play very, very good players, very, very solid players, and have a crappy night. It happens, and somebody out there somewhere might beat you with a bad lineup that just happened to score a goal, and yours didn't. That oftentimes is the difference. And goals are unpredictable, so sometimes it gets a little bit difficult. Now, you can always ask questions in Discord. You can always talk to our guys. There are cash game guys that are better than others at cash game advice. So you'll ask the questions and you'll learn who those guys are, and then you'll cling to those guys, or tournament guys if you play tournaments, whatever. It's all good. Just understand that some guys have a strength and some guys have weaknesses, and you can pretty much ask either one what they think about things, and they can guide you in the right direction. We'll come back in a minute and we'll do research and we'll do some cheat sheets and we'll maybe play with some lineups and stuff like that in video too. But for now, I think this is a good place to cut this one off. All right, guys, that's your little bit of intro, and we'll, I guess, come back and talk to you later. See ya.